A pleasant welcome to all my dear 8th standard children. Today we are going to see your next chapter from your biology. Yes, so your next chapter, your 6th chapter from your biology is about circulatory system. Right. So in your lower standards you might have learnt about the circulation in blood, right? So in that chapter you must have been learnt the transport system that held in our body, which transports the necessary materials like nutrients, oxygen to all the parts of our body, right? So this transport system in the human body, we call it as circulatory system, right? So you also learned the circulatory organs that help in circulation of blood, right? So what are the things that involve in the circulatory system? Is your heart, blood vessels and blood. So these are the three parts that involve in the circulatory system. So in your 6th standard or in your lower standard, you might have learned what is heart, what is blood vessel and what is blood, right? Okay, so I hope you have recalled what it is it? Yes. So now in this standard, you are going to learn in deeper about the structure of heart. So structure of heart in terms of what are the valves, what are the blood vessels that is present inside the heart, right? And also you are going to learn about an important thing which is known as cardiac cycle. So what is this cardiac cycle? Right. So all these things in this session you are going to learn, right? So the circulatory system includes heart, blood vessel and blood, right? Of course, we all know that heart is a muscular organ which is present at the center of our chest region. So it is about the size of our folded fist, right? So if you clenched your fist, so this will be your size of your heart. So the heart is present in the chest region, slightly tilted to the left, and this heart is protected by the bony skeleton which is known as rib cage. So not only heart, the lungs also protected by the rib cage, right? So the heart is the only organ that functions throughout our lifetime, right? And we can see the heart is made up of cardiac muscles. So these cardiac muscles work out through their lifetime, right? And you can also see the heart is in the conical shape, right? So the heart is covered with the covering which is known as pericardium. Okay, so the pericardium is the outer covering of the heart and inside it is known as endocardium, right? So this pericardium and inside the heart there is some space between the heart and the pericardium. So this space is filled with a fluid which is known as pericardial fluid. Now in this session you are going to have a slight introduction about heart and what is cardiac cycle. Now let's see. So the covering of the heart. So this covering is known as pericardium. So the covering of the heart is known as pericardium. And in between the pericardium and the heart, this space is filled with fluid which is known as pericardial fluid. Clear? So now you know the external structure of the heart. Right. Now, let's see the internal structure of it. So, before we learn the internal structure, you should learn the cardiac cycle. So, cardiac cycle is also called where the heartbeat starts, right. So, it is nothing but sinoatrial node. So, sinoatrial node is also called as, we can also say, the impulse starts in the right atrium. So, the impulse is nothing but where the cardiac cycle starts, right. So, the heart receives the blood which is deficient in oxygen. So, this blood is received from all the parts of our body through the veins into your heart. First, the blood enters into your heart in a place which is known as right atrium. So, in the right atrium wall, you have a sinoatrial node. So, in this sinoatrial node only, the impulses of the heartbeat starts, right. So, impulses, what is impulses? The beat of the heart, the contraction and relaxation of the chambers of the heart. Now, here you can see, once the sinoatrial node receives the impulses help the heart to beat, right. So, then the sinoatrial node will pass the impulses to the fibers which is present in the heart as well as to the AV node. So, AV node is nothing but atrioventricular node, right. Now, here you can see the heartbeat. So, when you know that the heart is made up of 4 chambers, right. So, the upper chambers are called as atria or auricles and the lower chambers, it's called as ventricles. So, you know that, is it? Now, so when the auricles contracts, the ventricles relaxes. When the ventricle contracts, the auricle relaxes. So, this contraction and relaxation gives a special sound which is known as the heartbeat, right. So, sometimes when the AV node does not function properly, there we have to fix a artificial thing. So, generally this AV node is called as, we call it as pacemaker. So, when the AV node does not get any impulse or does not function properly, we have to depend on artificial pacemaker. So, SA node is nothing but pacemaker. When the pacemaker is not functioning properly, we have to put the artificial pacemaker. So, once we put the artificial pacemaker, it will be, the impulses of the heartbeat will be normal, right. So, this is about the pacemaker. Here the one cardiac cycle. So, once it contracts, relaxes, the blood comes to auricle and the blood comes to ventricle, and from the ventricle the blood goes through the blood vessel. So, here the cardiac cycle completes one cycle, right. So, this is about the cardiac cycle. So, now let us see what are the valves that is present in the heart, right. So, there are actually 4 valves that is present, right. So, here you can see, so the auricles are separated by a septum. So, they are called as auricular septum, and the ventricles are separated by a septum. So, this is known as interventricular septum, right. And this auricle and ventricles are separated by a atrioventricular valves, right. So, there are 4 valves. So, here we call it as tricuspid valve. Here we call it as bicuspid valve. So, the valve that present between the right atrium and left atrium is known as tricuspid valve, and the valve that is present between the left atrium and the left ventricle is known as bicuspid valve. So, this bicuspid valve is also known as mitral valve. So, now let us write, this is tricuspid valve, and this one is bicuspid valve. So, this bicuspid valve is also known as mitral valve, right. So, there are few more 2 valves that is present. So, from the right ventricle, a blood vessel that is going to the lungs. So, this blood vessel is known as pulmonary artery. So, this pulmonary artery have a valve which is present in the pulmonary artery. So, mostly the main function of the valve is to prevent backflow of blood. So, here you can see this is known as pulmonary valve. And from the left ventricle, the blood vessel is going to all the parts of our body. So, this blood vessel is known as aorta. So, the aorta carries the oxygenated blood to all the parts of our body from the left ventricle. So, here also the aortic valve has one valve, so which is known as aortic valve. Right. So, in the structure of heart, you already learnt there are 4 chambers that is present, right. So, in this session, you also learnt the cardiac cycle, that is the, you learnt about the sinoatrial node, which is also called as pacemaker, right. And also you learnt what are the valves that is present. There are 4 valves that is present. Pulmonary valve, which is in the pulmonary artery, aortic valve, which is in the aorta, bicuspid valve or mitral valve, which is present between the left atrium and left ventricle, tricuspid valve, which is present between the right atrium and right ventricle, right. So, the remaining parts of the heart we will discuss in the next class. So, these are the things, the blood vessels, everything we will discuss in the next class. So, this is what the internal structure of the heart, right. So, today in this session, you have learnt about sinoatrial node, which is known as SA node. So, which is also called as pacemaker. So, here in this pacemaker, the impulses of the heartbeat starts. The impulses heartbeat starts here. So, clear? And also you learned about the valves that is present. So, there are 4 valves. The main function of the valve is to prevent backflow of blood. Prevent backflow of blood. Clear? So, hope you have learnt more interesting things about heart as well as SA node, that is pacemaker, right. So, go through the lesson and the remaining parts we will discuss in the next part. So thank you for watching. Have a great day.